In the spring of 1861, when thunder rolled over the Appalachian foothills and the war drums of the nation began to sound, Tennessee Hollow was a place the world forgot. The people there lived quiet lives among the pines and red clay, and in the heart of that hollow stood the Whitestone Chapel, a small wooden church with peeling white paint, built on a rise overlooking the mist-covered creek. The preacher there was Reverend Amos Whitestone, a tall, soft-spoken man with a gaze that carried both authority and kindness. But most folks in the hollow said it wasn't Amos who made the church holy. It was his wife, Clara. Clara Whitestone had eyes like candlelight, calm and warm even in darkness. She was a woman of quiet miracles, the kind who could calm a crying child with a hymn or soothe a fever with prayer. To the people of the hollow, she was not just the preacher's wife, she was the hollow's heart. But no one yet knew the secret she carried, that deep beneath her kindness lived a sorrow so great it haunted her every breath. One stormy night, the church bell rang twice, once at midnight and once again, a moment later, when no one was there to pull the rope. It was Jonah Mays, the blacksmith, who heard it first. He'd been out tending his injured mare when the chime echoed through the valley. He looked up toward the church hill and saw a single lantern glowing inside the chapel. The next morning, he told the town what he saw, but no one believed him. "That must have been the wind," Reverend Amos said, though his wife Clara's face went pale. For in truth, Clara had been inside the church that night, kneeling before the altar, whispering the same words she'd spoken every midnight since her child died 2 winters before. "Lord, bring them home, even for a moment." She wasn't calling for angels. She was calling for the lost souls of the hollow. They started appearing that spring. Tired travelers, war-bound men, and lost souls seeking shelter. Clara welcomed them all with her warm smile and a bowl of stew. But what unsettled the townsfolk was that these guests always came after sundown, and by morning they were gone, leaving behind no footprints, no horses, not even dishes. Old Mrs. Pruitt said she saw one of them, a young soldier boy with a broken jaw, sitting in the churchyard humming a hymn that hadn't been sung in 30 years. When she told Clara, the preacher's wife only said softly, "Sometimes the lost find their way home for just one night." Rumors spread fast. Folks began whispering that Clara Whitestone could call back the dead. By June, the Civil War had reached even Tennessee Hollow. Young men were vanishing into the Confederate lines, and the sound of gunfire echoed from the ridges. Reverend Amos tried to keep faith alive, but the pews grew emptier each Sunday. Clara, meanwhile, began hosting what she called her midnight suppers, quiet gatherings for anyone who needed rest, food, or forgiveness. No one knew who attended. No one dared ask. But one night, Jonah Mays followed a flicker of lantern light from his forge to the chapel window, and what he saw chilled him. A table set for 7, candles burning low, and Clara standing before the guests, faces pale as moonlight, eyes hollow yet kind. They were men he recognized, men who died at Shiloh the week before. Jonah told no one for days, but when he finally confided in the Reverend, Amos went still. "That's impossible," Amos whispered. But there was something in his eyes, something that said he feared it might be true. That night, Amos went to the church himself. He hid in the shadows as the clock struck 12, and sure enough, the door opened. The air turned cold. Clara entered carrying a loaf of bread and a bowl of soup. She knelt, whispered a prayer, and said softly, "Welcome home, brothers. You're safe here." And from the shadows of the pews, 7 figures stepped into the candlelight. Men Amos had buried himself. The preacher fell to his knees, trembling. His wife looked at him through tears. "They're not here to harm us," she said. "They only come to remember who they were before the war took them." When Amos asked her how she'd done it, Clara could not explain. "It began the night our boy passed," she said. "I prayed for peace, and I heard voices at the door. They were travelers, wounded soldiers. I fed them, prayed over them, and when I looked up, they were gone." At first she thought it was grief. Then it happened again. She didn't summon them. They came. Always the lost, always at midnight, and always with gratitude in their eyes. Amos realized something strange and holy had rooted itself in his wife's sorrow, a gift born not of witchcraft, but of compassion so deep that heaven itself might have answered it. Still, he feared what the town would say if they found out, so he made her promise. "Keep this between us, Clara. The world isn't kind to what it doesn't understand." One night, a new guest arrived, a Union soldier in tattered blue, bleeding from his shoulder. His name was Elias Hart, no older than 20. When Clara tended to his wounds, he said, "I shouldn't be here. I fell in the river weeks ago. My mama's still waiting." She wept as she held his trembling hands. "Then rest, Elias. You're home tonight." Amos stood behind her, torn between awe and fear. The young man's breath slowed, his eyes softened, and a faint smile crossed his lips before he faded like mist. The next morning, Clara placed a wildflower on the church steps. The wind carried a whisper through the pines. "Thank you, ma'am." Word spread faster than wildfire. "Clara Whitestone's feeding ghosts," someone muttered at the general store. "Her bread wakes the dead," said another. By the next Sabbath, only 3 people came to church. Others stood outside, crossing themselves when they saw Clara. Even Jonah Mays, who once admired her, now looked away. "It ain't natural," he said to his wife. "She's meddling with things better left alone." Clara's heart broke quietly, but she kept her peace. "If kindness brings the dead comfort," she said to Amos, "then let them call me strange. I'll still set the table." But as the hollow turned its back, the shadows in the chapel began to deepen. The midnight guests came more often, and their whispers lingered longer after dawn. Late one autumn night, Colonel Silas Burrow, the Confederate officer overseeing the region, rode into Tennessee Hollow. He had heard the rumors of a preacher's wife who could raise men from death. He came to see for himself. At midnight, he stood in the doorway of the chapel as Clara prayed. When the spirits appeared, he gasped, recognizing some of his fallen men. "By God, woman," he whispered, "you could change the course of this war." But Clara turned to him, trembling. "These souls are not yours to command. They come for peace, not for battle." The colonel's expression hardened. "If you can call them back, you can make them fight again." Amos stepped between them. "You will not turn grace into weaponry, Colonel." The colonel left that night in fury, but his threat lingered. Weeks passed. One bitter December night, the hollow woke to the sound of crackling fire. Whitestone Chapel was ablaze. Flames clawed at the steeple while snow fell thick around it. Townsfolk rushed to form a bucket line, but it was too late. The roof collapsed in a shower of sparks. When dawn came, the church was gone, nothing left but ashes and the charred remains of the altar table where Clara once served her midnight guests. Reverend Amos was found outside, coughing, his hands burned from trying to save her. But Clara was nowhere to be found. Some said she perished in the fire. Others whispered that when the smoke cleared, they saw 7 figures in the mist, walking toward the creek, with Clara among them. And when the church bell rang one last time that morning, it echoed through the hollow like a farewell. Winter came heavy and cruel that year. The hollow lay under snow, and the wind moaned through the burned frame of Whitestone Chapel like a grieving spirit. Reverend Amos moved into a small cabin by the creek. He preached no sermons, rang no bells. His wife was gone, and so was his voice. But strange things began again. At midnight, townsfolk swore they saw lanterns flickering through the trees near the ruins. Sometimes they heard singing, soft and low, a woman's voice, the same hymn Clara once sang to calm the dying. Jonah Mays, guilt heavy in his heart, went one night to see for himself, and what he saw broke him to his knees. In the clearing where the chapel once stood, the snow was untouched except for 7 sets of footprints leading to the creek, and standing at the water's edge was Clara Whitestone, dressed in white, her face gentle as the moon. But when he blinked, she was gone. A month later, Amos returned to the ruins to salvage what little remained. Beneath a burned pew, he found a small tin box, sealed tight. Inside was a folded piece of paper, scorched around the edges but still legible. It was Clara's handwriting. "If you're reading this, my love, it means the fire took what it must. Do not mourn me. The souls I tended were never truly gone. They were the echoes of mercy, given one more night to rest in kindness. I do not raise the dead. I only remind the living that love survives them." Amos pressed the letter to his chest and wept like a child. For the first time in months, the wind through the ashes sounded not mournful, but like a song. By early spring, word of the preacher's wife who raised the dead had spread beyond Tennessee. One day, a man arrived from Washington, a Union doctor named Dr. Nathaniel Crane, working with wounded soldiers. He sought out Amos and asked, "Is it true your wife could heal the dying?" Amos hesitated. "She didn't heal bodies. She healed the part of a soul that still longed to go home." Crane leaned forward. "I've seen men live after days of fever, claiming they saw a woman in white by their bedside, singing hymns from across the hollow." Amos looked away, tears welling. Then she's still doing what she was sent to do. That same spring, a wagon arrived from Kentucky. In it sat a small boy named Samuel Clay, no older than 8, his leg bandaged and his face pale. He carried a wooden cross in his lap. He told Amos, "A lady in white found me after the battle. She gave me bread and said, 'Tell my husband the guests are at peace.'" Amos fell silent. His hands trembled as he took the cross from the boy. It was carved from the old chapel's wood. Samuel smiled faintly. "She told me to live a long life. Said the dead don't want our sorrow. They want our kindness." Colonel Silas Burrow returned to Tennessee Hollow after the war, his body thin and spirit heavy. He sought Amos by the creek and knelt before him. "I was wrong," the old soldier said. "I tried to use what was holy for my own gain. But before my last battle, she came to me." Amos looked up sharply. "Clara?" The colonel nodded, eyes glassy. She touched my hand and said, "War ends, even for those who never stop fighting." I laid down my sword that night. I've carried peace since he left a small satchel at Amos's feet, a handful of church nails and a locket containing Clara's portrait, unharmed by the fire. Years passed. By 1866, Tennessee Hollow began to heal. Fields turned green again. Families returned. Amos, older now, decided to rebuild the chapel, not in the same place, but closer to the creek, where the lantern light still glowed some nights. The new church was smaller, humbler, built by the hands of the same people who once feared his wife. Jonah Mays, his hair gray, hammered the final crossbeam himself. When the church opened, Amos gave no sermon. Instead, he read Clara's letter aloud to the whole hollow. "We do not need miracles to see grace. Every act of mercy is its own resurrection." The congregation wept. For the first time in years, the hollow felt alive again. That summer, something wondrous happened. On the anniversary of the fire, people gathered at the creek to pray. The air was still, and fireflies danced among the reeds. Then, as midnight struck, 100 small lanterns floated down the water. No one knew from where. They glided past the new chapel, glowing softly. Some swore they saw faces reflected in the water, smiling, peaceful, familiar. Amos whispered through tears, "They're the guests." And for the first time, he didn't feel haunted. He felt home. Amos lived quietly another 10 years. One spring night, feeling his strength failing, he set a small table by the church window, bread, wine, and 2 cups. He lit a candle and whispered, "One last supper, Clara. If heaven permits." The candle flickered once, then steadied. The air grew warm, the scent of lilies filled the room, and then her hand, soft and real, touched his. Clara sat across from him, smiling like the first morning sun. "You kept the guests safe," she said. "Now it's your turn to rest." They shared bread in silence, tears mingling with laughter, hearts finally unburdened. When dawn came, the congregation found Amos at the table, head bowed, a faint smile on his lips, and 2 empty cups. Years later, children of Tennessee Hollow still spoke of the preacher's wife, who resurrected her guests at midnight. But as the years passed, the tale changed. Some said she was an angel, some said she was a ghost. But the elders knew the truth. She was a woman whose grief turned to grace, whose compassion bridged 2 worlds. Every year, on the night of the 100 lights, people left bread and candles by the creek for strangers, wanderers, and the unseen. And the Hollow never forgot. Kindness, when offered freely, can wake the dead parts of any heart. 1 century later, in 1961, workers clearing an old trail found the rusted bell of Whitestone Chapel buried beneath the earth. When they lifted it, the wind suddenly changed, carrying a faint, melodic sound through the valley. The old caretaker swore he heard a woman's voice singing a hymn, the same one Clara used to hum to her guests. They placed the bell in the new church where it hangs to this day. It rings each year on the night of the 100 lights, though no one pulls the rope, and the people of Tennessee Hollow still gather, leaving a seat empty at their table for any weary traveler, living or gone. For as the Hollow learned from Clara Whitestone, every act of love is a resurrection.